The Galactic Archaeological Council's ship materialized above Earth's atmosphere with all the grandeur of a wet paper towel falling onto a kitchen floor. Which, given their mission to investigate mysteriously vanished civilizations, was probably fitting. The ship itself looked like someone had taken every sci-fi movie cliché, thrown them in a blender, and then decided the resulting design was too exciting. Professor Quix stood at the viewport, his three eyes blinking in careful sequence as he reviewed the preliminary scans. As the GAC's leading expert on extinct civilizations, he'd seen his share of planetary graveyards. But Earth? Earth was special. Earth was practically a serial killer's gallery of lost civilizations. Most peculiar, he mumbled, his translator turning his native click speech into crisp English. Most peculiar indeed. Behind him, his research assistant Voop was practically vibrating with excitement, all 6 appendages twitching as she reviewed the data. Professor, the readings are off the charts. We're detecting residual markers from at least 8 distinct civilization collapses. Yes, I can count, Quix replied, waving one of his upper appendages dismissively. The real question is why this insignificant little blue marble has more civilizational extinctions than any other planet we've studied, and more importantly, he turned all 3 eyes toward the planet below. Why is there still one here? The ship's descent through Earth's atmosphere was carefully choreographed to avoid detection by the general population. After all, while humanity had been welcomed into the galactic community 5 years ago, most humans still went about their daily lives blissfully unaware of their cosmic neighbors. It was easier that way, fewer awkward questions about cattle mutilations and crop circles that way. Their landing site was a discreet facility in Nevada, because of course it was Nevada. As Quix descended the ship's ramp with all the dignity his species could muster, which, given their resemblance to upright praying mantises with extra arms, wasn't much, he was greeted by their assigned human liaison. Professor Quix. Welcome to Earth. The human's enthusiasm was almost painful to witness. I'm Officer Pete Martinez, Earth Historical Conservation Corps. I'll be your guide during your investigation. He stuck out his hand in greeting, then quickly withdrew it, remembering the Galaxy's briefing about human customs being potentially offensive to other species. Quix's middle eye focused on Martinez, while his other 2 scanned the surrounding facility. Yes, well, I trust you understand the gravity of our investigation, Officer Martinez. The Giaki's never encountered a planet with such an extensive record of civilizational extinction events. The Council is quite concerned. Martinez's smile didn't waver, but it did take on a slightly nervous edge. Oh, you mean all those ancient civilizations? Yeah, we've got tons of those. Really fascinating stuff, I'm sure you'll find. Fascinating. Quix's antenna twitched. Officer Martinez, there is nothing fascinating about planetary genocide. The sheer number of lost civilizations on this world is deeply troubling. The Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, the Romans, the Maya, all gone, vanished, and yet, he gestured at Martinez with one spindly arm. Here you stand. Well, technically Martinez began, but Quix was already striding past him, his research team scuttling along behind with their equipment. We will begin our investigation immediately. The Council requires answers about what force or entity is responsible for this unprecedented pattern of destruction. The safety of the galaxy may depend on it. Martinez watched them go, his smile finally falling. Oh boy, he muttered to himself. This is going to be a long week. He pulled out his phone and fired off a quick text to his supervisor. Houston, we have a problem. The aliens think we're living on top of a cosmic graveyard. How do I explain evolution and cultural progression to a bunch of space archaeologists who think civilization works like a game of civilization? The response came back almost immediately. Don't panic. Just keep them away from Twitter and any history books written before 1950. We'll figure something out. Martinez sighed and hurried after the alien research team, who were already setting up equipment that looked like it had been stolen from the props department of a B-movie sci-fi film. This was definitely not covered in his cultural liaison training. The next morning found Professor Quix hunched over a peculiar device that looked like a cross between a metal detector and a disco ball. Martinez had arrived early, armed with coffee and a detailed presentation about human cultural development, only to find the alien research team had been working through the night. Ah, Officer Martinez. Quix clicked, not looking up from his instrument. Perhaps you can explain why we're detecting weapons signatures at every single archaeological site we've scanned. Martinez took a long sip of coffee. Weapons signatures? Oh, you mean like arrowheads and stuff? Yeah, those are pretty common in archaeological sites. Hunting tools, you know. All three of Quix's eyes swiveled to focus on him. Hunting tools? Officer Martinez, we're detecting residual energy from massive conflicts. These civilizations didn't just disappear, they were systematically dismantled. Behind Quix, Voop was practically dancing with nervous energy as she operated what appeared to be a holographic filing cabinet. Professor, I've cross-referenced the temporal markers. Each civilization's collapse coincides perfectly with the rise of a new dominant culture. It's like they're being replaced. Yes, Martinez said carefully. That's generally how human civilization works. Cultures change over time, new societies emerge. Quix's outburst was so sudden that Martinez nearly spilled his coffee. So you admit that your people were involved? What? No. I mean yes, but not like. Look at these readings. Quix thrust a glowing tablet under Martinez's nose. The screen showed a complex series of overlapping wavelengths that meant absolutely nothing to the human officer. Every single transition period shows the same pattern. A flourishing civilization, then conflict, then a complete restructuring of the social order. And now here you are, sitting atop the ruins of countless fallen societies. Martinez pinched the bridge of his nose. Professor, I think you're misinterpreting. Officer Martinez Quix's voice had taken on a distinctly suspicious tone. Where exactly did your people come from? Well, originally from Africa, but... Africa, Voop exclaimed, her appendages flying over her holographic controls. Professor, that's where we detected the oldest civilization markers. Of course it is, Quix muttered darkly. They've been doing this from the beginning. Martinez watched in growing dismay as the alien research team huddled around their equipment, chittering excitedly in their native language. Their translator units were still running, letting him catch disturbing phrases like systematic replacement pattern and civilization predators and unprecedented cultural parasitism. He pulled out his phone again. They think we're civilization-destroying parasites. Send help, and maybe a really good anthropologist. The response best we can do is a history professor from the local community college. Would that help? Martinez looked over at the alien team, who were now creating an elaborate conspiracy board with holographic string connecting various historical events. Quix was standing in front of it, all three eyes wide, looking like he'd just discovered the cosmic equivalent of a serial killer's journal. No, Martinez texted back. I don't think that would help at all. Remarkable, Quix was saying, his antenna twitching with academic excitement. The pattern is so clear now. Each time a civilization reaches its peak, a new group emerges from within, causing massive social upheaval and completely replacing the existing power structure. It's like watching a virus evolve in real time. Those are called revolutions, Martinez tried to explain. They're a natural part of human social development. Natural. Quix spun around so fast his extra appendages flailed. Officer Martinez, there is nothing natural about one civilization completely subsuming another. On every other world we've studied, civilizations either advance together or die out entirely. But here, he gestured at his conspiracy board. Here they keep getting replaced by newer versions. It's unprecedented. Martinez stared at the holographic display. From the alien's perspective, he had to admit it did look pretty bad. Every major empire and civilization in human history was connected by lines of influence, conflict and transformation. To someone who didn't understand human cultural evolution, it probably did look less like natural progression and more like some kind of systematic civilization-devouring process. Professor, he said carefully, I think we need to have a very long talk about how human society actually works. Oh, we certainly do, Quix agreed, but his tone suggested he wasn't planning to do much listening. The council will want a full report on this unprecedented situation. He turned to his team. Pack up the equipment. We have enough preliminary data to convene an emergency session. Emergency session? Martinez felt his stomach drop. Wait, what kind of emergency are we talking about here? But Quix was already scuttling back toward their ship, his research team hurrying behind him like a group of oversized, scientifically inclined insects late for a very important date. Martinez watched them go, then looked back at his phone. After a moment's consideration, he typed, "I think I just accidentally convinced a bunch of alien archaeologists that humanity is some kind of civilization-consuming hive mind. Should I be worried?" The response took several minutes to arrive on a scale of 1 to 10. "Let's call it a solid oh crap." Professor Quix's emergency report to the Galactic Archaeological Council was going about, as well as a nuclear reactor made of chocolate. The council chamber, a vast holographic space that made everyone look like they were floating in a cosmic soup, was filled with the agitated murmuring of 24 different species. Martinez, watching from a designated observer's platform, was seriously considering whether it was too late to change careers. Distinguished members of the council, Quix was saying, his image enlarged to dramatic proportions. What we have discovered on Earth is nothing short of evolutionary horror. Observe. The holographic space filled with a timeline of human civilization. To Martinez's mounting dismay, Quix had somehow managed to make human history look like a documentary about parasitic wasps. Note the pattern, Quix clicked excitedly. Each civilization appears to grow naturally at first. The Sumerians, for example, developing their culture, their writing, their technologies. But then he paused for dramatic effect. The Akkadians emerge, seemingly from nowhere, absorbing and replacing the existing power structure. Professor Martinez tried to interject. "That's not exactly." "And it keeps happening," Quix continued, completely ignoring him. "The Egyptian Old Kingdom falls to the Middle Kingdom, which falls to the New Kingdom. The Greek city-states give way to Alexander's empire. Rome rises from a tiny settlement to consume everything around it. It's like watching a cosmic game of cultural Pac-Man." The council chamber erupted in alarmed chittering. Martinez could see representatives from various alien species, either recoiling in horror or leaning forward in morbid fascination. But surely, one council member asked, their translator making their voice sound like Morgan Freeman having an existential crisis, "Surely this is just coincidence." "That's what I thought at first," Quix replied. "But look at the modern era. The holographic display zoomed forward in time. They're still doing it. Ancient agricultural societies transformed into industrial nations, kingdoms becoming republics. It's happening faster than ever." "That's called progress," Martinez shouted. But in the vast chamber, his voice was lost among the increasing panic. And now Quix's voice dropped to a dramatic whisper that somehow still filled the entire chamber. "They're spreading to the stars. Tell me, colleagues, what happens when a species that habitually consumes and replaces civilizations gains access to interstellar travel?" The chamber exploded into chaos. Martinez watched in helpless frustration as various council members began calling for containment protocols, cultural quarantines, and in one particularly dramatic case, the construction of a giant space wall around Earth's solar system. Professor Quix Martinez finally managed to make himself heard. "You're completely misunderstanding human cultural development. We're not consuming civilizations, we're evolving. Those weren't different species or separate civilizations, they were all humans. All of them." The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye, sensory organ, and mysterious glowing appendage turned toward Martinez. "What? What do you mean, all humans?" Quix asked, his antenna drooping slightly. "I mean exactly that. The Sumerians didn't get replaced by some outside force. Their culture changed and developed into something new. Same with Egypt, Rome, and every other civilization you're talking about. It's all us. We change, we grow, we develop new ways of doing things. But the technological shifts, the cultural replacements, the complete restructuring of societies," Quix was starting to sound like someone had just told him that everything he knew about archaeology was wrong, which, to be fair, was exactly what was happening. "Yes," Martinez threw his hands up in exasperation. "That's what humans do. We don't stay the same. We learn, we change, we figure out better ways to do things. Sometimes it's peaceful, sometimes it's messy, but it's all part of human development. The Egyptians didn't vanish. Their descendants are still around. Rome didn't get eaten by some civilization-consuming parasite. It evolved into dozens of new cultures." The council chamber had gone so quiet you could have heard a photon drop. Quix's 3 eyes were blinking in rapid, uncoordinated succession, like his brain was trying to reset itself. "Are you saying," one council member ventured, "that humans are capable of completely rebuilding their civilization, from scratch, multiple times?" "Yes. And you do this." Voluntarily. Well, sometimes it's more by necessity, but basically yes. But why? Quix asked, his voice small and confused. Why would you keep destroying and rebuilding your own civilizations? Martinez took a deep breath. Because that's how we grow. That's how we learn. Each time we rebuild, we try to do it better. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail, but we keep trying. That's what humanity is all about. The chamber erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Less panic, more fascination. Martinez could hear phrases like unprecedented adaptive capability and cultural metamorphosis, and they're like civilization phoenixes. Quix was still standing in the center of the chamber, looking like someone had just told him that everything he knew about archaeology was actually interpretive dance. But this changes everything. Every paper I've ever written. Every theory about civilizational development. All our assumptions about cultural evolution. Professor Martinez said gently, I think you might want to sit down. We have a lot to talk about. In the background, he could hear one council member muttering to another, so they're not civilization-eating monsters. They're civilization-transforming monsters. I'm not sure if that's better or worse. Martinez just smiled. Sometimes, he reflected, being human meant being everyone's worst nightmare and greatest fascination, all at once. He made a mental note to request a raise when he got back to Earth. Explaining human nature to aliens definitely wasn't in his original job description. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had devolved into what Martinez could only describe as an interstellar academic meltdown. Quix was still in the center of the chamber, surrounded by floating displays of human history, looking like he was having an existential crisis in at least 3 dimensions. But this defies all known models of civilization development. The professor was practically vibrating with academic distress. A species cannot simply rebuild itself. That's not how society works. That's exactly how it works for us, Martinez said, trying to keep his voice level. He'd been promoted to the main floor of the chamber, probably because watching him try to explain human nature was the most entertainment the council had had in centuries. Look at this. Quix pulled up a new display showing ancient Rome. You're telling me that this civilization didn't die out, that it transformed? Well, yes, I mean, have you been to Italy? Or the Vatican? Roman culture didn't disappear, it evolved. Same with Greece, Egypt, Persia. They're all still around, just different. Different. One of the council members, a being that looked like a sentient cloud of sparkles, drifted forward. How different? Martinez pulled out his phone. Here, let me show you some pictures of modern Rome compared to ancient Rome. The chamber erupted in gasps as he displayed the images side by side in the holographic space. Ancient ruins next to modern buildings. The Colosseum then and now. The Roman Forum beside the modern city. They kept the old parts, someone shrieked. They just built around them. Of course we did, Martinez said. They're our history. Why would we get rid of them? But Quix was starting to make a sound like a dial-up modem having a panic attack. The technological progression, the cultural shifts, the complete reorganization of social structures. Yeah, we call that progress. Sometimes it happens slowly. Sometimes it happens all at once, but it's still us. Still human. That's not how civilization works. Quix finally exploded, all 3 eyes bulging. Civilizations are supposed to either advance along predictable paths or die out entirely. They don't just transform, Martinez suggested helpfully. Yes, no, I mean, this is unprecedented. Unnatural. It's actually, a new voice cut in. It's quite fascinating. All attention turned to one of the senior council members, a being that looked like a cross between a librarian and a bioluminescent jellyfish. They floated forward, tentacles wrapped around what appeared to be an ancient tablet. Consider, they continued, what this means for our understanding of civilizational development. Most species we've encountered treat their civilization as a single, continuous line. If it breaks, they collapse. If it bends too far, they shatter. But humans, they gestured at the displays of Earth's history. Humans treat civilization like a phoenix. They let it burn when it must, and then rebuild from the ashes. Exactly, Martinez said, grateful that someone finally got it. We're not destroying civilizations, we're recycling them. Taking what works, leaving what doesn't, and building something new. But the violence, another council member protested. The revolutions. The conflicts. Oh yeah, we're definitely not perfect at it, Martinez admitted. Sometimes change hurts. Sometimes we fight it. Sometimes we make huge mistakes. But we keep going, keep changing, keep trying to do better. It's like they're civilizational shapeshifters, someone whispered in horrified fascination. More like cultural adapters, the jellyfish librarian corrected. And perhaps this is why they survived when so many others didn't. They don't resist change, they embrace it, even when it means burning everything down and starting over. Quix had finally stopped making dial-up modem noises and was now staring at his data displays with new eyes. The patterns. They're not patterns of destruction. They're patterns of transformation. Every collapse coincides with a period of rapid advancement in another area. Now you're getting it, Martinez grinned. Want to see something really wild? Look up how many times we've completely revolutionized our technology in just the last century. The resulting display made several council members faint. This is impossible, Quix muttered. But his tone had changed from academic outrage to academic fascination. No species should be able to adapt this quickly, to change this fundamentally, to rebuild themselves this completely. That's humanity for you, Martinez shrugged. We're basically civilization's ultimate remix artists, taking bits and pieces from everything that came before, mixing them up with new ideas, and creating something totally different. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it's a complete disaster, but we never stop trying. The chamber had fallen into a contemplative silence, broken only by the occasional sound of someone's mind being blown. We may need to reconsider our entire approach to archaeological studies, Quix finally said, his academic pride clearly warring with his scientific curiosity, and possibly rewrite every textbook on civilizational development. Oh, just wait until I tell you about the Renaissance, Martinez grinned. That's when we decided to remix our remix. The sound Quix made in response would have crashed a lesser computer's translation software. The next few days were a blur of presentations, explanations, and what Martinez could only describe as alien academics having collective existential crises. He'd been promoted from suspicious representative of a civilization-consuming species to primary lecturer on human cultural development, which was definitely not in his original job description. So let me make sure I understand this correctly, Quix said, pacing back and forth in what was now being called the human understanding chamber. His three eyes hadn't blinked in sync for hours. You're saying that humans are essentially civilization hobbyists? I wouldn't put it exactly that way, Martinez replied. But we do tend to experiment a lot with different ways of organizing society. And these experiments include completely rebuilding your technological base every few generations. Well, yeah, I mean, look at computers. We went from room-size calculators to quantum computing in less than a century. The sound of alien minds breaking had become so common that nobody even flinched anymore when Voop short-circuited another holographic display with her distressed clicking. But why, one of the council members asked. They looked like a sophisticated wind chime having an anxiety attack. Why would any species choose to live in such constant upheaval? Martinez thought for a moment. Have you ever been really into something and discovered a new way to do it that makes the old way look completely outdated? Like updating research methodologies, Quix suggested. Exactly. Now imagine doing that with everything, all the time. That's humanity for you. We're basically cosmic upgraders who can't stop hitting the refresh button on civilization. The chamber filled with murmurs of understanding, punctuated by occasional sounds of academic distress. But what about stability, someone asked. Don't your people crave consistency? Martinez actually laughed at that one. Oh, we love stability. We just can't agree on what it looks like or how to achieve it, so we keep trying new things. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it's a disaster, but we always learn something. Learn something, Quix's antenna twitched. You treat civilization like some kind of ongoing research project. More like the world's longest-running open-source project, Martinez grinned. Everybody contributes, everybody critiques, and somehow it keeps moving forward. The aftermath. EP. The final report of the Galactic Archaeological Council on human civilization development was the most entertaining document Martinez had ever read, mostly because it read like a scientific paper having an existential crisis. In conclusion, Quix had written, Humanity appears to be less a single civilization and more a continuous experiment in civilizational development. Their apparent ability to deliberately initiate cultural and technological paradigm shifts, combined with their tendency to preserve and remix elements of previous societal iterations, suggests that they are either the most adaptable species we have encountered or collectively insane. Possibly both. The appendix included a new classification for Earth civilization type Phoenix Remix warning approach with academic caution. Martinez was particularly fond of the section titled Human Paradoxes That Make No Sense But Somehow Work Anyway, which included gems like, they deliberately make their own lives more complicated in the name of progress. They appear to be simultaneously nostalgic for their past and desperate to escape it. They treat their entire history as a set of building blocks that can be recombined at will. The Council had ultimately decided that humanity wasn't a threat to galactic civilization, we were just really, really weird. They did, however, establish a new academic field, human developmental studies, dedicated to trying to figure out how a species could survive being so consistently inconsistent. Quix had taken it all particularly well, once he got over the initial academic shock. His new research paper, The Species That Keeps Reinventing Itself, a Study in Civilizational Adaptability, was already causing waves in the galactic academic community. You know, he said to Martinez on his last day on Earth, all three eyes focused on a sunset over the ruins of an ancient temple that now had a coffee shop built into it. I think I finally understand why your species survived when so many others didn't. Oh, Martinez was sipping his coffee, enjoying the bizarre sight of an alien archaeologist having a profound moment at Starbucks. Most species treat civilization like a building, rigid, structured, unchangeable, except through catastrophic damage. But humans treat it like a garden, always growing, always changing, always needs pruning and replanting, and sometimes complete renovation. Martinez nodded. That's actually a pretty good analogy. Just promise me one thing, Quix said, his antenna twitching with what might have been humor. The next time you decide to completely reinvent human civilization, give us some warning. The paperwork for updating our historical records is absolutely nightmarish. No promises, Martinez grinned. But I'll try to send a memo. As he watched the alien archaeological team pack up their equipment and prepare to leave, Martinez couldn't help but wonder what they'd make of humanity's next great reinvention. Whatever it was, he was pretty sure it would give some poor alien archaeologist of the future the academic equivalent of a heart attack. And honestly, he was kind of looking forward to it. Classified addendum to Galactic Council records note, all future archaeological surveys of Earth to be preceded by mandatory courses in human psychology, chaos theory, and antacid consumption. The species that treats civilization like a beta test program requires special academic handling.